I think I got a big one finally. Yep, that's a big one. Huh? Now I wait to see what the hell we're doing. Slide right up. It's not the one we called up, is it? Man, that'd take a while. And this is how you come down. Well, I don't know what's going on with the internet. The Wi-Fi was managed to grab my buddy's, place. Normally it'd take a few hours for a video to load, and I think it's on day 2 for the last one. People probably think I got eaten by a bear. I just videotaped quite the bear fight. It's pretty cool. I bet you I've seen probably, I don't know, 30 or 40 bears. Seen 2 that I'd harvest. Last evening, right on the very last sight, I finally ran into this big one here that was on the camera. And he actually was rowing in, and I caught him just around the corner looking at me about 40 yards. He looked at me and he gave me a big huff and a growl and came towards me a couple jumps. I couldn't believe it. And then he turned around and took off in a huff into the timber. So I never got a crack at him, but I just saw another one down here, pretty big one. I thought in the distance because it's bigger than the smaller one it was chasing and fighting with. And I rode the boat right up to him, but not the right one. Sometimes when you are selective hunting, it's you go home and nothing. Fairly often. There's quite the branch quite the tree break I found the other day, huh? It's a big tree, man. Fresh. It's a fresh break. Anyway, let's hear some voices while I'm sitting here waiting, watching this basin. This is titled Some Facts Regarding Hairy Man from Australia Aboriginal, First Nations Elder. Alright. I listen to every story read on this channel since he started it, Steve. My name is Uncle Bob. I'm a proud Australian Aboriginal First Nations warrior and elder. A pleasure to meet you, sir. I'm 77 years young with so much life experience. I'm proud to say I have many friends and acquaintances from different Indigenous First Nations peoples in British Columbia and Washington State who I keep in constant contact with. I would encourage all of your listeners to heed the words of the wise elders from First Nations peoples in your part of the world. They speak many truths. Some facts regarding Australia for all world to know. Australian Aboriginal peoples are the oldest continually living people culture on planet Earth. We have continually been in Australia for around 100,000 years plus, right through until today. We are the traditional custodians of Australia. Our peoples did live through the last ice age, which was approximately 20,000 years ago, by adapting to environmental conditions. Our people lived/cohabitated our country with the megafauna that died out approximately 45,000 years ago. Some of that megafauna that they coexisted with through those times were very big lizards, big wombats, very large saltwater crocodiles, and big red kangaroos. When white men invaded and settled Australia in 1788, there were 250 plus Aboriginal nations of people that inhabited the Australian continent. Australian Aboriginal peoples have similar but not the same belief systems to many other First Nations peoples in other countries in the world. First Nation peoples throughout Canada, USA have been around, living in their nations for approximately 15,000 years. Australian Aboriginal peoples in Australia tell stories of the hairy man, Sasquatch, or Sabe, throughout their histories, passed down through song lines. Hairy man peoples are real. We have many different names for them. These names differ from nation to nation. Our stories talk about the small hairy man and the large hairy man. Australian Aboriginal peoples have continually cohabited with these beings throughout our lifetimes. There has been in many cases where clear natural barriers have delineated areas/territories where they lived and our people lived. There are stories of times when Aboriginal warriors and these beings have clashed. It's looking for the bears. Australian Aboriginal peoples do not, as a rule, tell stories to non-Aboriginal peoples about their knowledge of these beings due to our lures. I've watched many Sasquatch videos/films on social media. Just about everything, and all of them, are bullshit from what I know and have been told. A suggestion to all: do not smack wooden posts on trees. Do not try yelling out vocalizations. Do not clack rocks together. Do not leave gifts of any kind or try to track these beings. You have no idea what you're doing and what you might be getting yourself into. Many people overthink what these beings do and what they believe are capable of doing and or their abilities, but never underestimate them. I personally do not take stock in following nests made underground, teepee structures, X's. Who were the individuals that decided these things mattered? Or is it just clickbait to grow channels or for monetization? That's the end of that one. And there you go. Well, if you, hopefully maybe one day, if you are listening to this, you would maybe send us some knowledge. We are all one. I firmly believe we are all one. No matter who may have walked on the land first. One fact that we can't ignore is that we are all here together on this planet, right? We all should have each other's back. We all should be sharing knowledge with each other. We all should be helping each other. We all should be encouraging each person to have a frickin' fun, exciting, and healthy lifetime. But if you've got some knowledge you think we could benefit from, sir, I would appreciate if you sent us. Shared. And there you go. Small bear to my left. Coming this way. You probably hear my voice and get scared and take off. It's titled, It Walked Right Up Behind Me. Hey Steve, your new shop reminds me of growing up in Alaska in a hunting family. All of our protein came from nature. My father and his brothers were all avid hunters/fishermen. In fact, my uncle, Ken Oldham, was an outfitter/bush pilot/hunting lodge owner. Our homes were filled with bear rugs on the floor, on the walls. My point is, I know without a doubt what a bear looks like. My dad passed in a car accident, and my mom moved us around a lot. We landed in Longview, Washington in 1968. I was almost 11 years old, and it was late May, only 1.5 weeks of school left, and the last week was filled with a 5-day camping trip to an old logging camp sitting on a river. I was so excited, as I had never stayed in a cabin before, only tents. There was a main lodge kitchen building surrounded by cabins. Each cabin held around 10 on-cots with one adult per cabin. He's still coming. The cabin and lodge sit up above grades, so you would need a step ladder to look in a window from the outside. The first night was quiet in our cabin. Sorry. But at breakfast, some girls from another cabin were saying they saw someone looking in the window and scratching the door of their cabin. My new friend Jackie and I figured it was the boys sneaking around trying to scare the girls. The second night, we sang around the campfire until it was quite late, and then went into the lodge for a hot cocoa. Jackie and I sat across from each other at a long picnic table. I sat against the wall. The window was above my head, but it was about 8 feet off the ground from the outside. Jackie and I were just chatting when suddenly Jackie's face turned from a smile to sheer terror as she flips herself out of her seat, landing on the floor, yelling, "Monster! Monster!" The adults all came running over. Nobody checked outside. One woman slapped Jackie across her face and told her that she was causing everyone to panic. Jackie saw a hairy, dark face looking in at her. So what do the adults do? They open the double doors at the end of the building. The doors may be 20 feet to the edge of heavy timber. They set a chair halfway between the forest edge and the door and made her sit there in the dark alone for an hour. They would not let me sit with her, so I stood in the doorway, talking to her the entire time. I think I read this a long time ago. I'm going to do it again. So she would know I was there. She just sobbed in her hands the whole time. No words, just tears. She was traumatized by this entire ordeal, and it made her physically sick. Day 3, Jackie was still sick. She just wanted to stay in bed. So I went on a morning hike, and then after lunch, a rousing game of softball involving the entire camp, except Jackie. I would guess 30 to 50 people, both 6th graders and teachers/parents, were making a lot of noise, screaming, shouting, whistling, etc. When the game was over, we were all about to head in for a snack. Myself and 2 other girls stopped at a spot at the edge of the woods to giggle about something. My back was to the woods, both girls facing me, when suddenly their expressions turned to terror, and they both screamed as they turned and ran towards the others. I know that I started to run. I turned and looked over my left shoulder, and all I saw was hair. It was so close, all I saw was cinnamon-colored hair, 3 to 4 inches long. Then I looked up and ended up locking eyes with this creature. I don't know why or how, but I ended up running in a circle instead of straight. Circles around this enormous creature, eyes locked. It would twist around at the waist to keep eye contact as I circled it. I don't know how many times I went around. I wish I knew. I must have been in shock, I guess. Suddenly I hear in the distance many voices calling my name, telling me to run this way, run this way. This is the part that I never tell anyone. However, it is the part that many adults present that day focused on. I was finally able to break the cycle and start hauling butt across the fields towards the others. I got about halfway before I tripped and fell. I saw the ground coming towards my face. I tried to cover my face, but all of a sudden something grabbed me and put me on my feet again. I never hit the ground. I thought it had me and was going to carry me off and eat me, but I was totally able to start running again. The really weird part is I did not feel anything grab me. I just felt myself being put back to my feet again. The first person to get to me, an older man, took me by the shoulders, bending down and looked me in the eyes. He asked, "How did you do that?" I wasn't sure what he was asking. Then he asked me again, "How did you pick yourself up like that when you fell?" And I answered him that I thought the monster had me. I thought he was trying to carry me off when he picked me up. The man then said, "No, the creature walked back into the woods as soon as you got yourself running straight." I just felt that it was a younger male. I was locked on its eyes, and I only saw his head and shoulder area as I ran around. Huge, amber-colored eyes, just like ours, only huge. Rounded head, a tall, not sloped forehead. 4 to 5 inch cinnamon or reddish-brown hair covering everything but his face, where the hair covered only his jawline. Huge, wide mouth with thin lips. His skin was like a buckskin color. He never opened his mouth, but he had this pleasant, surprised expression on his face. No odor. I believe him to be young because his hair was clean and shiny. His skin was clear with no wrinkles or scars. He was about 6.5 to 7 feet tall, I would guess. The next thing I know, they are telling us to pack up. The buses are coming for us. Where were we supposed to? Were we supposed to stay until Friday? I was very upset, as it was only Wednesday, and it didn't hurt me. So why must we go? They loaded us onto the buses anyway, and as they were pulling out, I spotted 5 or 6 hunters with long guns getting out of their trucks. They came to hunt down the bear that entered camp. What? That was no bear. Everyone there, they all saw it. It wasn't a bear. They called her parents and told them about the bear, but they didn't tell my mom what happened to me. They didn't tell Jackie's parents what happened to her either. A few days after I got home, my older brother showed me a book with a drawing of a Sasquatch, asking me, "Is this what you saw?" Yes, that's what I saw. My brothers believed me, but my sister and mom teased me instead. A few months ago, I managed to find my old friend Jackie on Facebook, and we have since had several long, involved conversations about that day, as I'm able to confirm her sighting to her, as she only remembers a black face looking in the window and being traumatized for weeks afterwards. She and her husband drove up the old logging camp to take pictures for me, but were stopped by a big gate saying the area was closed to public due to steelhead being protected in the nearby small river. Really? Seems like an odd spot for that. Heavy timber area with a small river running through it. I think they're protecting something much larger than a fish. I'm going to try and get a hiking permit next year. I am trained volunteer at the Natural History Museum here in Utah, so I'm hoping that that may open the door for a permit. We shall see. Thanks to you for this opportunity to share my encounter. I hope someone that was there that day hears it and comes forward. This experience has never kept me from the wilderness. I feel at home in the remote forests and deserts, and camp, hike, and fish every opportunity I get. Kind regards, Crystal Oldham Yengich. Yes, you may use my name. Crystal, this sounds familiar. I think we read this quite a while ago. And I'm not sure if anybody that was there has chimed in yet or not. There's been so many emails, right? People are funny. People are funny how they react in life, aren't they? What a thing to do to a kid. What a thing to see. What an experience to frickin' have. Who else? It's a real low tide. Lots of bears come down and get all the goodies off the beach and dig up clams and stuff and little crabs under rocks and stuff. But holy cow, did they ever come out at last light? I didn't get to bed till 11:30 by the time I got back last night. They were all over the place at last light. I don't know why they're not out right now, but there's a few. Let's encounter at Delmo Lake, Delmoe Lake. I believe I had an encounter with a sabe at Delmo Lake near Butte, Montana in 2019 while I was fishing with a buddy. Strangely enough, he was telling me about an indescribable noise he heard while he was out camping with some other buddies that went on all night. No sooner after he told me about it did the same noise start coming out of the timber around us. It sounded like a mixture of a growl, a higher-pitched yell similar to tenor voice range, and a couple other elements that I simply cannot place or explain. Aside from the noise, there were two other things that were just not right. First, it would vocalize and then move location a couple hundred yards, either to the front left or rear left of us, with varying distance. The furthest sounded about 100 yards away, and the closest being around 30 yards or so away, and would vocalize about every 15 to 30 seconds. Second was the extreme level of unease that came over the both of us suddenly and forcefully. Neither of us saw anything through the timber or heard any movement. It also got dead quiet during this. After about half an hour of this thing making noise, my buddy and I decided that it was a little bit past time to go. We packed up what we thought was everything and wasted no time getting back to my rig. Unfortunately, when we got there, I realized that my brilliance had forgotten to grab my tackle box and went to retrieve it alone. I had just got back to the shoreline when this overwhelming sense of get the F out of here hit me like a truck. Needless to say, I hightailed it out of there and haven't gone back to that particular corner of the lake since. It wasn't until I started watching your videos about 2 months ago that it dawned on me that I may very well have had an encounter with a sabe that day. Thank you for all that you do and having a place that people can share their experiences without ridicule, Ryan. I don't care if you use my name or not. Stay safe out there, bud, and look forward to seeing more videos from you. Okay, man, thanks for that share, especially for the location, right? Delmo Lake, you guys. If somebody's seen or heard, they're going to chime in. They're probably here. They're probably here. The bear doesn't seem to mind my voice. It's coming a little closer. Delmo Lake. Alright, here's another one titled Evicted from the Woods. My worst nightmare. This is red. When I just heard Jeremiah's story in Missouri, I knew I had to share mine. So many similarities. Unsolicited guess. My first encounter was about 34 years ago. I'm 53 now, but I was 20 at the time. Me and one of my close hunting and fishing buddies decided to do a night fish for big bass at a very remote pond in northern Pennsylvania. We got there about 2 hours before dark on a beautiful, clear, warm evening in late June. We had the whole place to ourselves all evening, almost. After we had taken the boat out of the back of my truck and placed it at the water's edge, we set up a propane lantern on a picnic table and heated up some beef stew my buddy had made earlier. We just ate and joked around for hours with a radio turned down low, sitting in the glow of the lantern beside the pond. The sun's beaming in my face right now, you guys, and ricocheting off that metal seat in front of me. About midnight, I wandered over to the boat in the darkness just to make sure it was ready to go. I stood by the boat for a moment, looking up at the beauty of the starlit sky. I've been coming up here my whole life at that time because I loved the pristine wilderness, listening to all the night creatures playing their music and gazing at the stars. Knowing you're 40 miles from civilization just added to that experience. Though all the sounds of the forest, my peace was slowly interrupted by a sound that didn't fit in. As I began to focus on the intrusive sound, I started to get a chill up my spine. I was young at the time, however, I grew up next to the forest and spent all my free time playing, hunting, and camping, etc. in the woods, and especially loved being there at night, so I had no fear of the dark, nor did my buddy. I realized that what I was hearing was the sound of very big rocks hitting the pond in deep water. I fished there for years and knew where all the deep points were in the pond. Where I was hearing the splashes were toward the center of the pond. I quickly called my buddy over and said, "Listen." After about 3 splashes, he turned toward me and just mumbled, "What could do that?" Those splashes are like 40 yards from the bank. Suddenly the splashes stopped, and we went back to the picnic table, back to the light. We speculated for a few minutes about what it could be, then laughed it off. We started making plans for how we'd locate and catch the big bass we come there to catch, and then we started hearing something moving in the woods from the direction along the bank nearest the splashes, which was about 100 yards away. We turned off the radio and realized the forest had gone dead silent. We sat still, listening for movement down along the pond where the trees were sparse and with very little ground clutter. We could now tell it was getting closer. So I grabbed my spotlight, but we couldn't see anything moving. I said maybe it's a bear that smelled the stew from earlier, or maybe it's just deer coming for a drink of water. The sounds of heavy footsteps started to spread out and multiply. I said there's more than one, whatever they are. It's a loon. They sound cool. Or maybe it's just deer coming for a drink of water. The sounds of heavy footsteps started to spread out and multiply, and I said there's more than one, whatever they are. The longer we listened, the more we realized that they were slowly moving in and creating an arc around us. Then they were definitely bipedal. We started spotlighting again, nothing. When they seemed to be within about 20 yards, we started hearing objects being thrown in our direction. A few minutes later, those objects, pine cones, stones, and small sticks, were landing near our feet. I walked over to my truck and grabbed my shotgun. While my buddy was anxiously spotlighting a 180-degree arc around us, then I yelled, "I don't know who you are or what you are, but that's close enough." We could now hear movement behind us, so I said to my buddy, "This isn't right. I can hear them within 15 yards of us, and we still can't see them." You could hear them running from tree to tree, which just confused us on their location. "I'll stand guard, you load the truck quickly," I told my buddy. If we had to guess, there was at least 5 moving in around us, plus how many were now moving in behind us. What? I told my buddy if we had to guess, there was at least 5 moving in around us, plus however many were now moving in behind us. Thank God they didn't vocalize at that close distance, because I did not pack extra underwear. With the truck haphazardly packed and the boat barely tied down to the truck, we took off. We drove 20 miles to where my grandparents' house was sitting empty. They had moved to South Carolina and made camp in the driveway for the night. The next morning we went fishing, but we chose somewhere else to go. For 34 years that night has haunted me, not knowing what had really transpired or who our mystery guests were. But now I believe I know. Thanks, Steve, for all you're doing and providing support and encouragement to everyday Joes who had an experience they did not ask for. I've been blessed that the experience didn't wreck my enjoyment of the woods, nor has more recent encounters. However, I'm always watching and heavily armed since then when in the woods, as if it would matter. Thanks again, Steve. Submitted by R. Pysher, Pysher in Pennsylvania. When you have nothing left to prove, then you have everything to give. He left that quote. Appreciate you, man. That'd scare the shit out of anybody. I don't care what you say, what anybody thinks. That would scare the shit out of anybody. Oh, the sun is absolutely burning my frickin' eyeballs out. I think that bear heard my voice and took off just now. The fog's burning off, the sun's coming up. I don't think much is going to go down until this evening. But I got to get home pretty quick. I've done what I set out to do. My friends, very, very dear friends of mine who have received the worst news anybody could ever imagine. And of course, it's just wrong. It's just not fair. Young family, 3 children. Anyway, very close to me, all of them. And she texted me and asked me to get her some halibut so she could have some healthy food. And one of her favorite foods before she started all the procedures that are going to go down. So this trip is dedicated to make sure that would happen. So I got lucky. I got a 60-pound halibut yesterday, and right away got a 20-pound salmon right after that. So I got it done. Maybe I'll go and catch a couple more salmon yet to make sure they got enough of that. And then I'm going to head over there. I have to go attend graduation of one of their daughters and offer my support and do whatever I can do. And I know they're not the first and only ones to go through this hell. It's not looking good. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. So I got the fish. Now, I think I shall carry on. Not sure what I'm going to do with the rest of the day. We'll see. I'll be back. And I'm going to share more emails. No matter what. I can't stop. I can't stop. Here we go. Well, to the spur of the moment decision, I decided to go halibut fishing on the way this morning. I wasn't set up. It's taking me forever. I hate that. Because you want to, as soon as you get out there, you want to throw the gear in the water, not sit around for half an hour tying leaders. Anyways, I'm ready to go. First rod in. Got a herring and a little rubber attractor on there. Favorite spot by myself. I'm gonna get some healthy food for my dear close friend who really needs a lot of hope and prayers and healthiness right now. So that's my motivation. I'm gonna get them their healthy food to help that healing process kick in. Once I get the gear out, maybe I'll share some people's voices from around the world. I think I got a big one finally. Yep, that's a big one. Sometimes it's easier just to leave it in the holder. This is a big one. is. That's a nice halibut. Beauty. There he is. Yeah, just made her.